Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. It's great to see you again. Today we're going to be looking at this Fender CD60 All Mahogany acoustic guitar. There's a lot to talk about today, so let's dive straight in. Now, as guitarists, there's a lot of variables that might sway our decision to buy a full acoustic guitar. This is not a semi-acoustic, this is actually a full acoustic guitar, no electronics supplied. Now, we're all different players in the same way that we all listen to and are inspired by lots of different types of music, so buying a guitar is no different to that really. But generally speaking, there are three main elements that really sway our decision. Now, just before we go any further with this review, I want to say this is my own Fender CD60 acoustic guitar. I've not been paid by Fender or any other manufacturer to make this video. These are my own honest opinions, and this review comes after months of owning and playing this guitar. Now, over the many years of writing, recording and producing music, I'm always on the lookout for really nice pieces of kit that punch well above their weight in terms of performance versus price. And I've got to say, this Fender CD60 acoustic guitar really does punch well above its price bracket. Now, as all us fellow guitarists know, if not dare admit, there are three main categories when it comes to choosing a guitar, three things that really sway us. Number one is the sound, number two is the feel, and let's be honest, number three is the looks. And I've got to say, that's one of the first things I noticed with this Fender guitar. I really love the dark chocolatey mahogany wood grain. When it comes to acoustic guitars, I've never really been into the pale ash colours on the bodywork. They just don't inspire me. But as soon as I saw this, I thought this thing had lots of character. Although this is technically a budget instrument, the wood grain on it really is nice. Now, of course, when you get serious about buying a new instrument, one of the main factors we look for is not just the way it looks. Probably top of the list for me, joint one or two, depending on the day, depending on what I'm looking for. It's obviously feel and sound. For me, actually, it's probably the feel of a guitar, because I can usually make it sound the way I want it to with various mods if it doesn't quite live up to my expectations. Now, something to bear in mind is, when it comes to electric guitars, it's actually not too hard to modify them, to actually make them sound and play the way you want them to. But it is somewhat of a different story when it comes to a full acoustic guitar. There are of course a few tips and tricks you can do to full acoustic guitars to make them sound, feel and play a bit better. It's a bit of a black art. It's just not as straightforward as it is with a full electric guitar. So let's break this Fender CD60 acoustic guitar review down into three sections. First, we'll have a look at the build quality and the detail. Then we'll have a play and let you get a really good listen to how this thing sounds. And then we'll draw some conclusions at the end. So let's dive in with the body. As you can see, this is a full dreadnought size guitar, which means there's no cutout on the lower section so you can reach the higher frets. So if you're looking to play something a little bit more like a lead guitarist, then you're going to struggle on this guitar. One of the benefits of having a full dreadnought style guitar is that it's got a very full and fruity character to the tone. Now, I've got to say, Fender really have done themselves proud of this CD60 model. It proudly wears the Fender logo on the headstock, and I'm really impressed with the build quality overall. I did initially wonder whether any corners had been cut in the making of this instrument, just to bring it in on price, but in fact the build, fit and finish of this guitar is really impressive. The sound hole does have some very modest and understated decoration, but it does catch the light and it just adds a little bit of class to it without going over the top. The single ply pickguard really adds to the classic aesthetic of this guitar too. But let's get to the very heart of this instrument. You'll know as fellow players that one of the most important aspects is the neck. It's the same for most of us. If any guitar has a neck with issues, it really just isn't playable, and we never feel inspired to pick it up and actually play it. But I'm really happy to report that this Fender CD60 has a great neck. A pretty common trick that acoustic guitar manufacturers tend to use to get a fruit and full sound is that they'll use a quite beefy neck, a sort of full half baseball bat style. And on the other end of the spectrum, you get guitars with thin necks, usually to allow players to get right up to the dusty end of the neck, as they call it. And the great thing about this Fender guitar is that the neck feels somewhere in the middle of both of those 2 points. So it's not too thin that it feels flimsy, and it's not too thick that it's really hard to play. It's actually very, very playable, very solid feeling neck, so that's a really good start. The edges of the fretboard are slightly rolled, so there's no sharp edges to the frets. And although it may seem a strange thing to say about a guitar, the strings are actually evenly spaced across the fretboard. It's not uncommon on some budget guitars, you actually find that the high E string's too close to the edge of the fretboard, or the low E. So again, it's full marks to Fender on the CD60. As usual, when I acquired this guitar, I had all my Luthery tools out and I checked that all the frets were in good shape. And these really are well done. There's no high or low points, they're crowned well and they're polished to a high sheen. Now, if I really was pushed to it and I had to be critical in some way about the neck, it would be perhaps that the fret markers are a little small. They are quite hard to see in low light, but me personally, I can live with that. And on the side of the neck, you get your classic dot markers, so you know exactly what position you're in. So overall I'd say that the neck and the feel of this guitar is fantastic. I'd have to rate it an 8 or a 9 out of 10. So let's move on to the headstock. And the quality of the tuners is actually fine. The ratio is really high, so you can get a good accurate tuning, and they do hold the tuning very, very well. And one of the reasons I can vouch for the tuning stability of this guitar is because I tend to play with a lot of open, weird tunings. It's very rare that I'll play a standard tuned guitar, and no matter what I throw at it, it always stays bang in tune throughout the whole session. Now this may seem like a bit of a counterintuitive point, but this Fender CD60S actually has something really good going for it, and that's that it's a full acoustic guitar, which means that all of the money that you have spent on your acoustic guitar has gone into the build and fit and finish of it, which if you think about it actually means that that initial purchase price hasn't had to go to cover things like the preamp, the pickup, the output jack and its internal wiring. This is an honest to goodness, plain and simple full acoustic guitar, where the only things that matter are feel and sound. And one final thing to note about the fit and finish of this guitar is that the lutherie involved is great. The neck, the pocket, the twin back pieces with the single seam, everything is done flawlessly. There's not a single gap mark anywhere. This thing really is as strong and robust as it sounds. So now, with all that said, let's move on to the sound test so we can really hear how this thing plays. As I mentioned, one of the main reasons I actually purchased this guitar in the first place was so I could sit around and figure out some more singer-songwriter style stuff. So I think we'll kick off the sound test with something in that vein. Now many years ago when I was a young hot-headed electric rock guitarist, one of the things that really turned me onto acoustic guitars was seeing Nirvana play the Unplugged MTV session. And Nirvana, who were then at the height of their powers, really turned me onto the more softer, delicate songwriting side of acoustic guitars, and I really started to see value in things other than an electric guitar. Hey guys, thanks for watching the video so far. Before we move on to the rest of the review, let me just take a quick second to say that if you're enjoying this video, please do leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps me out, and it helps me to know that you're as into this as I am. And I know it's cheesy and cliche, but please do hit the bell icon so you get notified every time I upload a video. Now, let's get back on with the review. So guys, what did you think to that? Hopefully it came across as well as it did in this room. The sound here is very full. There's lots of bottom end without things sounding too muddy. Most importantly, the mids cut through in just the way that an acoustic guitar needs to. And there are some nice highs there, just for a little bit of breath at the top end. There was no special miking techniques or trickery employed. It was simply just this microphone in front of this guitar. That's what you heard. So my conclusion about this Fender CD60 All Mahogany acoustic guitar is a big thumbs up. As I said at the top of this review, I'm always on the lookout for instruments and pieces of musical equipment that punch well above their performance pay grade, and this Fender CD60 definitely does just that. It just feels very comfortable and familiar to play it. The big dreadnought sound chamber resonates nicely against the stomach and the chest. You can really feel those notes as well as hear them. The neck is a joy to play, there's no sharp edges on the frets, and it feels great in your hand. So if you are into acoustic music, especially folk, then this would make a great guitar, and not just for beginners, but for intermediates and advanced players alike. These days there really is no reason to spend an absolute fortune on an acoustic guitar when you can get a fantastic instrument for a budget price. Yes, okay, we know, a more expensive instrument will be constructed using more exotic materials, but if that's not important to you and you're just looking for a good sounding, good playing instrument, then I would highly recommend the Fender CD60 All Mahogany full acoustic guitar. So I think that just about does it for this review, guys. Thanks for sticking around to the end. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and hopefully I'll catch you in the next one. Keep on playing.